Welcome to the Motivated Martial Arts Podcast. Your hosts, Jackson White and Gavin Cook, have been friends and Taekwondo training partners for over 40 years. This podcast will bring you a mixture of their life stories, martial arts, and business experiences to motivate you in life and throughout your martial arts journey. Adding in a mixture of inspiring interviews and some of the best traditional martial artists around today. So over to your hosts, the Motivated Martial Artists.
Welcome to the Motivated Martial Artists Podcast with me, Gavin Cook.
And me, Jackson White.
And this evening, we've got Nina Budd on the show. So Nina's one of our fellow TAGB instructors. So we're looking forward to have a chat with Nina this evening. Thanks for coming on, Nina.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So I'm going to kick off with the first question then, Nina. So really, just I suppose it's to get our listeners an insight into your backstory. So where you grew up, your schooling, and of course, inevitably, how you eventually got into martial arts.
Okay, so originally I'm from Bristol. I grew up in Bristol. When I was about 7 or 8, I think I started Judo. So I did Judo for a couple of years. I was like the smallest in the class, which is not that fun when you're doing Judo. There's a point where you just get fed up of being thrown around for kind of an hour solid. The club actually shut, and then I stopped doing martial arts, or I stopped doing Judo. And then a few years later...
So just if I can just interject there quickly. So why Judo? Just give us, try and explain why it was Judo.
I think it was just basically the first martial art that I kind of came across, to be honest. I've always been interested in martial arts to a certain extent, but it wasn't really that widespread where I was. So it was just a case of kind of stumbling across a class in the local sports centre and getting involved, and yeah.
Okay.
It's funny. There's so many awesome martial artists that started their journey that way. You know, when you think back to so what year was that when you started?
It was in the 80s, so it must have been kind of 87, 88, around about then.
Yeah, so the kids these days are spoiled, aren't they? You can go on, you can think, you know what, I quite fancy doing jiu-jitsu, I quite fancy doing Shotokan, I quite fancy doing MMA. You just go on Google, find your club, and off you go. Where, you know, for us, it was just a case of what was at the community centre on a Tuesday night, because that's the only night I've got free.
That's it. Yeah, there's an awful lot more choice these days, I think.
Okay, so you gave that up then after about a year. So when did you pick back up into any form of martial art?
Well, I was quite late starting actually. I didn't start Taekwondo until I was 16, and there was kind of a number of factors that led me towards starting Taekwondo. One of them, the main factor was I actually got mugged. Me and a group of our friends got mugged on a night out. I mean, I say mugged, but they didn't really take anything off us. It was just a case of kind of they wanted to inflict some violence on whoever happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And unfortunately, that was me and a couple of my friends. And
was that in Bristol?
Yeah.
No, I'm not surprised. It's a rough place, Bristol, you know. Every martial artist we've had on the show, they started martial arts from Bristol, I say, to protect themselves. I can name on one hand those people.
Well, it's a big city, Bristol, and
it is,
the inner city area is obviously like any inner city area. And we had a friend that lived locally. I didn't live in that area, but obviously we had connections in the area, so it wasn't kind of like we were totally out of our depth really. But it was late at night, and they were obviously just looking for trouble, and it kind of opened my eyes a little bit, because it was the first time that I've been put in a situation where I felt completely out of control. Yeah, I just they talk about kind of the fight, flight, or freeze scenario. Well, I definitely froze. I was literally, there was nothing I could do, and I kind of had to watch one of my good friends getting beaten up basically, and I could do nothing but stand there and watch. So a couple of weeks later, or a couple of months later.
It's funny because you talk about, untrained people freezing, but even trained people freeze, don't they?
Yeah.
And if you think about, you think about your club and think about all the students that you produce over the years, you actually wonder, even though they're wearing black belts, you actually wonder how many of them in that situation would actually be able to protect themselves in the right way.
Well, that's it. You don't know until you've been put in that position, do you? Really, that's the problem with it. You know, you can train as much as you want, but until you're put into that kind of particular scenario, you don't know how you're going to react. So I'd like to think
that's why people do competitions, isn't it? To try and ease them into that. I mean, you're never going to get the exact scenario, all the pressure and everything, the feelings, the emotions. But when you get people to compete, whether it's even just in patterns, I suppose, because I hate doing patterns. I'd rather go out and fight 2-on-1.
Patterns are the worst. They're the most scary. Patterns are the most scary because you're on your own.
Yeah, on your own, everyone's judging you. You're not kicking properly. But I suppose that's
especially when you do a pattern, Jackson. I'm not surprised you're scared.
Oh, that's harsh, Gavin. I can only recall the number of times you've frozen in the ring against me. It's allowed me to pop your nose on several occasions. But just going back to the crux of it, it's a nice environment, isn't it? It's a controlled environment to ease you into that scenario in any form of competition, I suppose.
Yeah, I think, if you spend a certain amount of time kind of getting used to people throwing punches and kicks at you, hopefully at some point, if that happens in real life, you'll be able to react to, to how you've trained to react to it, rather than standing there and being completely shocked that someone's throwing a punch at you,
No,
you still get that adrenaline dump, but it's more of a gradual adrenaline dump, isn't it? Because it's coming. You're going to be stepping in that ring at some point, so you sort of have time to prepare. But for you guys, walking down the road in the middle of the night at 2:00 in the morning, someone jumps you, it's an instant reaction, isn't it?
Yeah. It was pretty scary. I mean, I was like 15, 16, so
So it was go home, look for the nearest martial arts club.
Well, not exactly. I mean, it was kind of just a chance thing. I got a leaflet through the door, kind of maybe a few weeks or a few months later, about a Taekwondo.
It wasn't from the gym, was it? It wasn't a setup from the gym. What was the program? There was a martial arts film when they were doing that, weren't they? Jumping people just to get the students in.
Now, that's one way of getting students in, isn't it?
That's actually not a bad tactic. I like that.
There's a film about
that one down.
We can edit that bit out, right? And so there was a demonstration going on. It was literally on the same road that I lived on in the primary school at the bottom of the road. So I had no excuses, and I like I said, I'd always been into martial arts to a certain extent. So I thought I'd go along and have a look at this demo. I watched the demo, and I literally haven't looked back since that one day.
Okay, so who was your first instructor then, Nina?
So my first instructor was a guy called Jason Headington. He's not training anymore, but he used to train under Master G at the academy in Bristol. And he was a really nice guy, totally inspired me. Excellent fighter. He had a really sharp front leg side kick and a really sharp back fist blitz, which I wanted from the minute I saw him sparring. I wanted those techniques. So
Okay, and when you got to your first class, just explain how that environment was in the class. What drew you into it?
That's a long time ago now.
I know. We're here to tease those questions out of you.
Well, I think I managed to talk a couple of friends to kind of coming along with me. So I wasn't, I've never been that brave to kind of turn up and do stuff on my own, really. So we talked to a couple of guys to come along. And I think for them it was just kind of a social thing, because they lasted a couple of weeks and then they weren't really, but what surprised me is that when they decided not to go anymore, I wanted to carry on. I like the physical training. I'd always been quite active, but I wasn't really into any particular sport. But I really enjoyed the fact that I could push, and they were quite physical lessons. They weren't, it wasn't kind of really too much patterns and too much line work. There was a lot more physical, exercise and sparring, obviously, and pad work and stuff that I just, it just blew me away. I was in my element. I loved it.
Okay, can you remember back then to your first grading?
I do vaguely remember my first grading, because when you're a student in Bristol, your gradings are held at Bristol Taekwondo Academy. So that's where you guys would have gone to do your black belt gradings, and it was quite a big event. I wasn't really expecting it to be quite as it was. To walk into a purpose-made building. Obviously, we were training in a school hall, which is, you just turn up, and that used to be my primary school as well. So I was quite comfortable in that school, in that environment. And then all of a sudden I have to go on a Friday night, which is not my training night anyway. I have to go to a place that's unfamiliar, big dominating building, with a proper dojang, shiny floor, all black belts and suits. And Master Jew up there, and yeah, it was pretty scary.
It's intimidating, isn't it? Very intimidating.
It really was. But yeah, I got through it just about.
Not as intimidating as going in them toilets. Telling you.
So when so you progressed on. So what side of the martial art did you gravitate towards? Was it more the pattern side, or was it the competition side?
I like doing all of it really. I like doing patterns. At that point, you couldn't enter a competition until you got your yellow belt. I know that's slightly different now, but when I was training, and I entered the first one that I was able to enter, which was actually the British, I think, was the first one that I entered. Just about got my sparring gear and stuff, so I kind of went in there. I didn't really know what to expect, and it was held in Whitchurch. There's a big sports centre. I think they probably pulled it down by now, to be honest, because it was hanging by a thread in those days. So but yeah, it was massive, and the British even in those days was quite a big competition. I think I went out in the first round, point stop. I think maybe I scored 1 point. I'm not convinced even that happened. It was all a bit overwhelming, to be honest. But
a bit of a blur.
Yeah, a bit of a blur. But it didn't put me off. I just the next one that came, I just wanted to go in and try and do better. So.
Okay. So how old were you when you went forward to take your black or your black belt first dan?
I took my first dan in 1999. So I would have been 20, something like that.
Okay. What do you recall from that then? Just talk us through that.
Wow. It's hard to be honest, the first dan and the second dan kind of blur into this. I mean, it's funny because when you train towards a black belt, you've got kind of 3.5, 4 years of training to do for that one moment, which seems like quite a long time. And then when you get your first dan, it's like 2 years to second dan, and it kind of it seems like a long time, but you blink and it's there.
Yeah, you're ready. Oh, got to get those patterns sharp again.
Yeah. And then kind of the same for third, really. And then it sort of slowed down after third dan. I think it will kind of slow down a little bit. But I remember when I was training for my dan gradings, especially the first one, I was training 5-6 times a week. I was literally from as soon as my instructor Jason at the time mentioned that we could do extra classes. I think one I was probably about a yellow belt, and he mentioned. There was a sparring session at the academy. Mr. Jew was doing a sparring session on a Friday night because I used to train on Fridays. I used to train on Wednesdays and Thursdays at my club, but I didn't realise that I could do extra sessions on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So Tuesdays and Fridays, sorry. So I think he kind of mentioned it offhand, not really expecting anybody to turn up. So there I turned up to this sparring session on a Friday night as a yellow belt, and it was a senior grade session, so it was kind of blue belts and above. I turned up late to this session. I was like 5 minutes late, and I was a yellow belt, so I didn't really know kind of the etiquette and stuff. So I kind of walked into the hall, and I vaguely remembered that I was supposed to go to the front and bow into the instructor, which was Master Jew. So I kind of sauntered up to the front and bowed in, and he was like, "Okay, fall in the back." And I kind of started to saunter back, and he was like, "You better run to the back as fast as you can, or you'll be doing burpees for the rest of the." So that kind of showed me where I was going with that one. So I sprinted to the back, and it was a fantastic session. I finished it, and I literally hobbled out of there. I had massive blisters on the balls of both of my feet after that session. Just those feet. So, yeah.
So as an instructor then, Nina, obviously you're a full-time instructor. And I know I certainly find it's very difficult these days to get kids to commit to 2-3 times a week. And back in those days, like you said then, you were itching to do it. It was like Monday, I don't want to try on Monday, I want to try Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I want to get as much of it as I can. Where these days with all the, I suppose, all the distractions of devices and the internet, is so difficult, I find. I don't know if you find that in your club.
Mm-hmm. I do, yeah. I think it just comes down to the fact there is so much more kids can do now. Not even just activity wise, but when it comes to kind of fighting them off their devices and dragging them away from their tablets and stuff. I understand that it's got to be a struggle as a parent to try and get your kids to do anything that doesn't involve sitting in front of a screen. So I think we're quite lucky that we do manage to have as many junior students as we do. And our job as instructors is just keep them engaged and make sure they're having fun when they come to our classes. You know, giving them 100 burpees for being late or whatever is not going to be encouraging them to want to come to classes and have fun. So
very true.
Give them it as a reward. That's what I always do. If you give them I forget my kids with the per day. If you say to them, right, look, the first one back, the winner gets 10 press ups. Ready? Off you go, and they're like charging, desperate to be that one back, or the winner gets a dead arm. That's always my favourite.
I've got to the stage now where I have to check myself when we're doing. So we do the warm ups with the juniors, and I'll get them to choose kind of certain exercises. Sometimes I'll get them to choose, and I've come to the point where I'm really careful about when I choose them, what kind of level of intensity exercises I choose, because they manage to pick up, like if there's an exercise that I don't really like push-up burpees or, you know, anything like that. And they'll pick
any
up
of them.
And that's all they want to do. Every time they get to choose one-legged push-up burpees, you know, and you're just like, really, guys? What is this about?
So competition side. So just talking through some of your fighting career. How did you progress as a colour belt? How did you find that transitioning through all the grades as a colour belt competing? And how did that change when you became a black belt?
Well, I competed all the way through. Literally, I don't think I missed. I had a few injuries. I kind of struggled through colour belt with ankle. I tended to roll my ankle every kind of 3 or 4 months, which was crazy. So just permanently sprained ankles and trying to negotiate training and obviously still competing in that respect. I remember a few occasions when I'd sprained it and I would still go training on crutches, just sit at the back and just take in what I could, you know, because I just didn't want to be missing out on anything. Even if I couldn't train, I wanted to be there and try and absorb as much as I could. But yeah, I found a transition from point stop to continuous very difficult. I'm definitely more, I enjoy point fighting a lot more than I enjoy continuous. I think, I'm kind of a bit more technical and I quite like to kind of, you know, that's kind of how I like to spar.
Comes down to stamina, doesn't it? Comes down to stamina once you go from points to continuous. If you're not out running every morning, you're at a disadvantage straight away, aren't you?
It was mainly for me. It was kind of that being beaten by people that would just kind of punch repeatedly, punch, and I find that quite frustrating. Because I've always been a bit more of a kicker and a bit more technical, and it took me a while to kind of get around working out how to get around that, but moving into black belt, kind of the same thing. As a black belt, I fought pretty much in every weight division as a black belt, which is quite crazy when you look at it. I'm like 5 foot nothing and I fought in heavyweight at one point, and that was no fun at all.
I can imagine, yeah. Bloody hell.
That was when I realised I needed to up my training a little bit and kind of stop eating quite so much rubbish.
Lose a few kilos.
That's it. Exactly.
There's motivation there, isn't there? Though?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, certainly when I first came back into Taekwondo back in 2007, I was probably sitting at about 95 kilos. I remember the first competition I went in as heavyweight, and it was awful. Absolutely got my butt kicked, and then that motivated me to get down to light heavy at under 82. And even then, you know, the struggle to get down to that weight, not because I was unhealthy, I was just doing lots of weights and probably eating too many jelly donuts. It gives you something to train for and to be honest, when I got back down to 82, I felt much better, much more healthy. But it was the challenge to get down there, and the fact that I didn't want Bash or any of those big heavyweights kicking me in the face every 5 minutes for fun.
I think when their arms are longer than your legs, you know, you're kind of a loser. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. So talk us through some of your memorable fights. What would you say your worst fight was? Because you know, there's a reason we asked this. So again,
I don't know. It's difficult because I get really nervous. Even now, I get really nervous before I get in a ring, and it's mainly because I put quite a lot of pressure on myself, and I know that if I don't, it's not really about winning or losing. It's just about making sure that I do myself justice. You know. Mm-hmm. So we talked about that kind of fight, flight, freeze scenario, and sometimes you get in a ring and that still happens. You know, somebody's coming at you, and you just kind of, you know, you've been drilling sidestep and you've been drilling all this movement stuff, and you get in the ring and it just all goes out the window. You know. So
it can be quite challenging, can't it? Because my favourite saying, everyone's got a plan to get punched in the face. Mike Tyson. But it's actually true. But I think, and certainly some of the top fighters, they'll absorb that pain, reduce the confusion, and they get back to their game plan. Certainly, being a squad member for 10 years, that was one thing Master Walton always taught us. You've got to have a plan A and you've got to have a plan B. You try and put your plan onto them, impress that onto them. But if it doesn't work, then you need a plan B, which is normally how do you turn yourself from an offensive fighter into a defensive fighter. And I think, a good coach can see that very, very quickly and then communicate that to the fighter. That coach-fighter relationship, I think, is really important. But it is challenging. And I certainly found when I first arrived back into the squad, I had no fear. No fear of the opponents, because I thought, what's the worst they can do is knock me out. They're not going to blow me up or shoot me, so it's easy. But as I became more established and was winning places in the team over a number of years, the fear of not performing, all of a sudden, not the fear of the opponent, but the fear of not performing started to creep in, and that's something that was a new emotion or a new feeling that I had to deal with. It was really strange. Never bothered me before, but once I felt I'd established myself as a team member, and that really came in and a different challenge to overcome, I suppose.
Yeah, it's the pressure you put on yourself, isn't it? That's the worst thing. How to negotiate around that is, and just relax. And at the end of the day, you're there because you want to be there, and you should be enjoying what you're doing. And if you're not enjoying it, why are you
doing it? Exactly.
Yeah, who was it? Who was it on the podcast? I think people like Warren Vice. We had Warren on. I'm sure it's Warren. He just said, look, you've got to just keep smiling all the way through it. Exactly what you said, Nina. If you're not enjoying yourself, what you're doing it for? Life's short, isn't it? You're putting yourself under so much pressure, and you get in there and you hate what you're doing, and you think, and you're not performing because you're not really enjoying it. Yeah. Maybe it's time to take a break or retire, or take up darts, maybe.
So, do you still compete now?
Well, obviously
not through COVID, yeah, sure.
I was doing all right as well, which is typical, really.
So what do you compete in now?
So I was competing in lightweight ladies executive division, because I'm old now, old and crinkly.
Mature. I think the word is mature. When we move into the vets, moving gracefully with maturity.
I don't know about that. But yeah, the good news for me was it's back to point stop, which I love. So yeah, I think I was definitely enjoying it a lot more and having more fun, and I think competitions,
less pressure, isn't there? I think.
Yeah, for sure. And competitions now are more about a social thing, or were obviously before COVID, were more social. So it wasn't just a case of go there and get yourself worked up and have a fight and then go home. It was more go there and catch up with people that you haven't seen since the last competition, and I've really missed that actually over the last.
It's been difficult, isn't it? Not being able to catch up with family members.
Yeah, well, tag teams are so much fun, isn't it? You go along, do a bit of refereeing, do a tag team at the end. There's no pressure. It's a little bit of fun, and sometimes you perform really well, don't you, in tag teams? Yeah,
in team stuff, for sure. And it's always the most fun to watch as well.
The tag teams are, aren't they? Yeah. When I retired, I was like, that's it. I'm never competing again, because if I start competing, I want to get back to the level I was at, and I can't because I'm too old. So I started doing a lot of reffing. And it was always fun doing the tag team at the end, because the pressure's off, isn't it? And you see some of the fighters that they're technically good, but they just can't control that anxiety and all the things that we've just been speaking about, so they don't perform. But actually, when they're in the tag team, because the pressure is off, you actually see the best of them, which is actually quite good to do.
Yeah.
So, what about the reffing side of things? Do you get involved in refereeing and officiating?
I do a bit. I generally I'm more. If I'm at a competition, I'll be competing and juggling. As you probably know, juggling, reffing, and competing can be quite tricky. Even at the big competitions where you get a bit of notice, it can be quite tricky. And for me, having students at competitions, if I'm in a DOBOK, it's easy for me to get around and try and make sure that they're in the place
they're supposed to be. On the square they're supposed to be at. So just a tip on this: if ever you do decide to do a square and you get allocated it,
I know what's coming.
And Gavin walks towards you, walk away, because he'll never be on your square. You'll be up there all day working your butt off, looking for some relief, some respite. and Gavin's not there. He's got this clipboard, and I don't,
I don't carry a clipboard. What is it?
He carries a clipboard.
1970s. 1970s.
And pretends he's monitoring his students, and you'll never get any work out of this.
But Nina understands, because you're there, aren't you? And you know what it's like. And you got your dobok on, and all of a sudden, sometimes you have 30, 40 of your students at that competition. A lot of them are kids, first time, and you're exactly right. You start off with the best intentions. Right, I'm going to referee today. I'm going to compete, and I'm going to make sure my students have a great day. And you just feel yourself pulled around so much. And by the time you actually get round to fighting, you're just physically and mentally exhausted, aren't you? Just from, because you can't, there's no, I mean, you know what it's like when you go back to when you're competing properly for yourself. You get there early. You might put your headphones on. You might have like a routine that you do before the fight to make sure you're in the zone when you step on the mat. But when you're just being pulled around all the time by your students, you can't do that, can you?
No, it's difficult. I think the last one, actually, I think the British was probably the last one that because the English was cancelled, wasn't it, last year?
Yeah.
And I was competing on one area, and one of my black belt cadet students was competing at the same time, kind of 3 rings across the way, and I was literally just kind of trying to look to see how he was getting on at the same time as, because it was his first time in the division, and he shot up a little bit. He's a few inches taller than he was, so he was kind of, he was punching above his weight, so to speak. And I wanted to see how he was getting on, and and having that focus on what you're supposed to be doing, and it's difficult to divide that kind of attention, really. But
So talk to us a little bit about your clubs then, Nina. So you're a full-time instructor. When did you get into teaching?
So I started teaching when I was a red belt, not kind of on my own, but I started assisting my instructor as a red belt, just doing bits and pieces like us all, really helping out with the warm-ups or doing kind of one-to-one stuff with whoever needed teaching one-to-one. And then I think I took my instructors 2001, I think I qualified. Being in Bristol was quite difficult because the Southwest itself is saturated with TAGB clubs. There's so many clubs there, and the opportunity to open a club in Bristol just wasn't appearing. So I did a lot of teaching for my instructor. I got a lot of good experience out of that. I got to trial and error an awful lot of stuff, and kind of really grew as an instructor there. I feel sorry for some of the students, to be honest, because I was just trying a lot of different stuff out just to kind of see what works and what doesn't work. And being quite into the fitness side of it, I think there's a few occasions where I kind of checked the clock at the academy, and it would have gone on kind of 15 minutes longer than we should have done, and we'd done nothing but exercise for the entire hour and 15-minute session. I wonder why they were looking a bit tired, but so when in 2008, when we moved to Essex, was kind of the opportunity that I had to open my own clubs. It took a while to get established. I'm now running one in it's in Hockley, which is close to Southend-on-Sea, and then Chelmsford as well. We had a few before COVID. We had a few kind of after school clubs and things like that. Hopefully we'll be able to get those going again.
I think there's certainly a real appetite, isn't there, amongst the education system to get people back into schools, to get them teaching. There's a real appetite from parents. They want to get their kids back engaged with their after school activities, and dare I say, they're just their normal everyday activities. I think they're itching to do it.
I think, and they need to do it as well. I think they've missed so much socially. I think kids have missed out so much over the past 12 months. A
year for a kid is a long time, isn't it?
Certainly is,
for a child, it's a long time. Most definitely. So quite intrigued. So what made you? I know it said you moved to Essex. How did you start kicking off your clubs? What was the sort of methodology you used? How were you guided in it, or was it just all off your own back? What's your secret sauce, Nina?
I haven't really got one. I had a bit of support from kind of friends in the Southwest. So the Southwest TAGB is a big family, and it's and it's one that I don't think it doesn't matter how far away I move. I don't think I'll ever leave that Southwest family. There's people there that I know I can count on whenever and whatever happens. So I'm really lucky to be part of that. They say you've always got to remember your roots, and I think that is really important, especially when you've got such strong roots as that. But yeah, so I had a bit of help. I kind of approached schools. I did the leaflet thing, you know, where you go into a school kind of suited and booted with your stacks of leaflets in kind of piles of 30, and you go, right, can you give one to each class, and did that. And yeah, and then there was a club running in Chelmsford at the time, Master James McKenna.
Okay, yeah.
So I was able to actually go and train with him, so I could keep up my training as well, which was fantastic. And he's an excellent instructor. Really, really enjoyed those sessions.
Yeah, he's a lovely guy, isn't he? Actually, we should get him on the show. Actually.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I was training with him, and I got a bit of support from him as well. And it turns out that some of the students that were training with him were also kind of in my area. So I got them to come along, and they sort of promoted in the schools that they went to, and it just kind of built from there, really. And then I took staff end on from another instructor who couldn't run it any longer. So that's how I got that one. So
did you sort of go all out in the first instance to go straight full time, Nina, or did you start off with like a small cluster and just grow it from that, and then eventually leave your job? Was that how it sort of went?
Yeah, I wasn't brave enough to just kind of go, right, this is what I'm going to do. And no, I wasn't that brave. And you know, me and my husband have both moved to Essex, obviously together. We both moved without jobs to come to, so it was kind of, we were basically we both needed to get work as soon as we'd moved here. So I was working nights for Tesco's, which wasn't a lot of fun, but it gave me time to kind of build the clubs and, you know, work towards what I wanted to be doing. And then as things started to pick up, I could drop nights, and eventually got to the stage where I just thought, you know what, I'm gonna try and do this full time.
I mean, you're not to do similar, are you, Gavin? You did pretty much a full-time job, grew your clubs to a point where you thought, right, they're ready now, I can jump over.
I think that when I look back, my biggest mistake was not doing it sooner, if I'm honest. I think, you know, you procrastinate for a long time, don't you? And I had a decent job, and my club was growing, and I kept thinking, one day I'll leave my job and become a full-time instructor. And then the next year comes around, and it's like, one day I'll do it. And then finally, you know, I got a different boss actually at my job, who knew that I'd basically been doing nothing for 2 years other than trying to grow my clubs on work time. So I knew my days were going to be numbered at some point. So it gave me that push. But it only probably took 6 months, I would say, from leaving my job to the point where my clubs had grown to the extent that they had replaced my income from my job. And you sort of think, God, only 6 months. I wish I'd done it 2 years before. Or 3 years before. But again, that's so true in life, isn't it? You know, we procrastinate on so many things. It comes down to that fear, you know, and over the other side of fear is, you know, have you ever done a skydive before, Nina?
No.
I always remember it was Will Smith, and he was just talking about doing skydiving. Saying, you know, when you're in that aeroplane and you're there and you're just about to chuck you out, and you think, and then once you've done it, you've got the biggest grin on your face, thinking, that was just amazing. And it's not, it's never as bad as what you think it's going to be, is it, over that other side?
It's taking the leap, isn't it? And I think it's something that I've definitely learned as I've got older is to just, you know, when your brain straight away says no to something,
go and do it.
It should be yes.
Yeah. It's our mantra: say yes first, think about how we're going to do it later, isn't it?
Yeah.
I always think if you got that feeling in your tummy that you want to be sick, you know, you're doing the right thing.
No, good stuff. So what do you see for the future of your clubs now? Again, we're just starting to unlock out of COVID for the second time, I suppose. So what sort of strategy have you got for getting things moving again?
Well, I think really and truly the way forward is juniors and kids. I think that's, you know, we need to be switching up the way we're doing things, and we need to be you know, on board with kind of child development and the psychology and science behind that if we want to retain and grow the clubs that we have. What I really want to do is open my own club, have my own building, have my own facilities in order to do that, and that's kind of what I'd like to be working towards. As far as the students go, I'm working on developing some of the junior students towards leadership roles. In the hope that, you know, in a few years' time, then they'll be able to be in a position to kind of start teaching themselves. I can set them up themselves. So, it's definitely the way to go. Especially, you know, even if COVID hadn't happened, I think what we do is so valuable to kids but now even more so, I think it's
most definitely.
Sorry, Jack, I was going to say it comes down to picking the right students as well, doesn't it? Because as you know, you get these great kids and you start putting all your time and your effort into them, and they say, right, I'm off to university now, or I'm off to the, and you're thinking,
God, we were those kids, mate. So you can't complain.
I know.
Mentored for 12 years, and Dad, I'm going to go and join the army now. He's like, oh, right, you're not going to take over the club eventually? No, I'm going to go and join the army. And you went off
traveling,
bumming it around Australia, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I remember
I was heartbroken.
Yeah, but I remember your dad saying, you can't leave. You can't. It's like got other. It's such a difficult decision when you've been with an instructor for 10 years of your life or whatever to actually make that change, and even going off to university, and it's really difficult to leave, isn't it?
But sometimes they come back, That's
look at us two. There we go. We turned up in my dad's line, and I suppose there was a third party we've had on the show as well. He went off and moved to Norfolk, started doing different types of martial art. And I remember one year we all came back and we were lining up in my dad's class. 30 years on, absolutely crazy.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I've just I'm in the process of getting, because my son Harry, he leaves school in June. He doesn't want to do A levels, doesn't want to do college. He really wants to, because he's been doing Taekwondo with me since he was 4. And obviously he's always been, well, I'll say always, this year obviously it hasn't been with COVID and everything else, and he's at that teenage years where it becomes quite difficult anyway. But up until that point, he'd been doing quite a lot of teaching within my clubs, and he's like, I want to do an apprenticeship, I want to do what you're doing. And to me, that's like great, because I've got loads of crap jobs that I need doing around the house.
Loads of admin, loads of
I got loads of flyers that need dropping off. No, but on a serious note, it's nice because that you don't always have to go down that traditional route. And I say that to my students all the time. If you're not academic, it's not the be all and end all going to school, going to university. I never dreamt that I'll be making a living from teaching Taekwondo, doing podcasts,
it's interesting, isn't
doing
it?
stuff
Because
within martial arts.
Do you remember? We both quit for a long time, and I got back into it, Nina. And it wasn't until we were doing the Clash of the Titans, and that was 2009. And I said, Gav, you're in York, come over to Huddersfield and watch. And he's like, nah, I'm not into martial arts anymore. Do you remember?
Yeah.
And I said, nah, come over and watch. And from that, then you went and joined a club in York, didn't you?
Yeah, and loved it. Chance, I just remember putting my dobok on for the first time in 12 years. And finding my belt, finding my macho head guard, my white macho head guard that was in the loft. Do you remember them ones?
Yeah.
White
that's it. Yeah, and the white blitz mitts, had all that stuff. And but I just remember putting my dobok on for the first time and putting my belt on. It just felt great to be in the gym. Everything hurt like hell for the next week, ankles, knees, being barefooted on the floor, and about my comfy Nike Airs on.
That's one thing I'm not looking forward to going back to once we go back to indoor, no shoes. It's going to be carnage on the feet, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going to be painful. Just getting, I was luckily enough in the gap between the first and the second wave, we had Master Oliver come and do a lesson for us.
Uh-huh.
And I said, right, Master Oliver, do you mind if I get in the line and do it with you? I haven't been taught with him for nearly 30 years, in fact, nearly 40 years. And the next day, God, I was aching. Just all those little bits, you don't expect.
Those bits you forget about,
Yeah, sore feet, sore balls of the feet. So, we're coming to the end of the podcast now, so we always try and get a couple of questions out. Do you want to shoot first, Gav?
Yeah, so Nina, just I suppose a question, Jackie normally asks this, but so
Gavin was crying last week. Now.
Yeah,
I'm taking all the limelight, so I got to give him a segue in.
I got a bit upset because he kept asking the final questions. So what keeps you motivated? We are the motivated martial artists. So what, I suppose, over this period of time, over your whole training, what has kept you motivated?
I think for me, it's with martial arts in general. I think it's a personal development thing. You're never going to be quite where you want to be, and there's always something you can improve on. And I think that's what keeps me motivated. That and the students that you have, and the progress that you see them making, and the difference that you can make in especially in the young students that you have, the difference that you can make in where they're going, and you can see how it's helped you. and to pass that on to your juniors. There's nothing more than that, really.
Yeah, you're right. It's just having it's just seeing progression, isn't it? Progression in yourself, progression in your students.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're maybe underestimated a little bit martial arts instructors in the wider world, aren't we? Obviously, certainly not between we all know how
not within our fraternity.
In our fraternity, but in the wider audience, we're sort of overlooked because we do a good job. We're like teachers, we're like therapists. We're all built into one, aren't we? The things that we have to do, and the questions we get asked from parents, from our students, and
I think it's easy to kind of forget the impact that you can have on people, and every so often, either a parent or a student will say something to you, and you realize that actually you need to step up, and you need to kind of reach that standard, because they already see you there. They're looking up to you as to be somebody, and you can't let them down. You let them down, or you can let yourself down, but you can't let other people down.
No, definitely. Okay, then, Nina. Final question then. What advice? So I know you picked up martial arts at 16, and that's actually quite a rare thing, because we see certainly across sport, not just martial arts, but across sports in general. Teenage girls tend to drop out of sport at that age. So what advice would you give to a young teenage lady, a young woman, about getting into martial arts?
I think it just kind of depends on the person. I think it's given me so much as a person. I honestly don't know who I'd be if Taekwondo hadn't come along at the time that it did. As you say, at 16, my life could have gone many different ways. And I'm just glad that I stumbled across that demonstration when I did. And
just glad that you got mugged.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. But the opportunities that I've had, and and the amount I've been able to grow, and how I'm still learning, and I'm still developing, and I'm still growing now, I wouldn't have had any of that if circumstances hadn't. So like you say, actually, when you look at situations, everything happens for a reason. I think, if somebody has the inclination towards martial arts, I think what we're doing, you can't beat what we're doing. But it's about being active, so for some people it might not be martial arts, it might be dance, or if you find something that you have a passion for, and you find the right people in the right place, nothing's going to stop you. You can go as far as you want to go and beyond.
I'd probably add one thing to that. You're not just joining a sport or an art, you're joining a family, aren't you? You're joining a community of like-minded people, regardless of your ability. Whether you can do the splits, or like me and Gavin struggle to touch our toes now.
Speak for yourself.
No, it doesn't matter, because there's so much martial arts can offer you. Whether you're the best kicker, you're the best fighter, you're the best pattern person, you're the best instructor, you can be the best referee, the best umpire. There's such a plethora of things that you can excel at in a martial art. You don't have to be the kickboxer or Jackie Chan. There's something in it for everybody, and certainly you can achieve that with the support of the martial arts family.
Yeah, and you find that the martial arts family become family and friends for life, don't they?
Yeah.
Because you're so intertwined in your goals and your aspirations and the things that you do on a daily basis. You go there and you're punching and kicking, your best mate in the face. You're trying to hurt them, you're trying to break their nose at some points, but then you're still going to have a beer in the bar after and talk about how you almost broke my nose. No, it's crazy, isn't it? But it forges friends for life, doesn't it? And I'm sure you found that in your life as well.
There's people that I see, I might see maybe twice, 3 times a year, but as soon as you see them, you're right back to where you've always been with them. It's about that connection that you have when you're in the same place, really coming from the same place. So
that common understanding. Nina, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on this evening.
It's been fun.
It's really good to get a good insight to you, especially since we did the 7 ladies in 7 days. You hold the record for hits on that, by the way.
I honestly don't know.
It went viral. It was a great session. So anyone who hasn't seen it, get on YouTube. And search for Nina Budd on the Motivated Martial Artist YouTube site, because it's a hour and a half seminar. Is it an hour and a half?
An hour? It's an hour, I think.
Yeah, which is out of this world. So some really good quality instructional techniques there.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was really good. Yeah, thanks for coming on the show, Nina.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, have a good
And I
evening.
look forward to seeing
we'll
you
speak
at.
to you soon.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing you at the next competition, whenever that might be.
Well, that may be. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Cheers, Nina. Take care. Bye. I hope you all enjoyed this week's episode of the Motivated Martial Artist podcast. Don't forget to check out our Facebook page and our Facebook group, the Motivated Martial Artist podcast.
And don't forget also the Motivated Martial Artist Instagram page.
So head along for some extra content, interviews, and much more.
So until next week, it's bye from Jackson
And Gavin?
the Motivated Martial Artists.